there was there was a guy dressed as a duck crowd surfing, and she's like, why is that guy a duck? I got to explain to her all of the lore. Hey everyone, welcome to the S.O.B Marketing Podcast, where we celebrate the S.O.B that you are, and if you haven't figured it out yet, we mean small-owned business. We don't mean S.O.B.
Listen, we know that as a small business owner, you are working hard on the daily to keep your business fully operational while trying to promote it. And while some days it may feel like the business is owning you, if we're being honest with each other, I bet you would admit that you wouldn't give up the insanity for anything.
Our commitment here at the S.O.B Marketing Podcast is to give you the real talk, what works when it comes to advertising, marketing, promoting your business, and then what doesn't really work.
And Chelsea and I promise to always keep the conversation real. Happy birthday to you. I'm trying to serenade you because we're celebrating Chelsea's birth week. Yeah, finger snaps. Chelsea, do you want to tell us how old you are?
I am 28 now.
Oh, I love it. All right. And so being 28 years of age, what is part of your lore?
Ooh, part of my lore.
Yeah.
Well, we've discussed this on the podcast previously, but I do not like birds, horses, and children.
I mean,
my biggest fear is, I guess, a child with a parrot riding a horse.
Oh, man, I got to take your birthday gift back.
Oh, God, no.
I was going to have a child riding a horse with the parrot deliver a flower of bouquets.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Spiked bouquets, though.
Spiked
yeah. All right.
Okay.
So that is part of your lore.
It is.
If you're listening to this and you're kind of scratching your head and you're like, what is lore? Like maybe it's a term you know, but not a term that you use in everyday life. Welcome to the club, because I also, I just had never used that term before, and it was something you introduced me to.
Yes.
And so just explain what lore is.
Yeah, so lore is exactly what you think it is. It's the stories, the knowledge, the accumulated knowledge passed down about a specific topic. It's often not written down, or there's unofficial lore.
I love it. So it's like it's a passed down story, history, tradition, stuff like that.
Yeah, tradition, stuff like that. But I think with this newer generation, with my generation, we are using the term more often about smaller things than, an entire society or something like that. Like I often say, that's part of my lore.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've taken it to personalize
the exact same thing that it's always meant. It's just we're taking it now to stand for smaller things like myself or Vivian brands.
Yes. Okay. So that is the topic at hand. If you haven't guessed, we are going to be discussing lore marketing.
Yes.
Yes, it's a thing. No, it's not something we made up.
Nope.
And we want to bring this to you and have this discussion so that you know that this is an option. Chelsea, before we dive into all that good stuff, do you have a hot take?
Yeah, Vivian, my hot take this week, it relates to the conversation we're going to have a little later, because today we're talking about lore marketing. We're going to explain what is lore marketing, how it would work for your small business. We are also going to talk about the difference between lore and storytelling, which I think is very important. My hot take, my hot take for this week is about storytelling. We talk about storytelling a lot in marketing. It's really important. It is really hard to do well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those elusive things, to be honest with you, because I hear so often people say, oh, they're a really good storyteller. I think that's a little subjective, right? So what would be a good storyteller to me might be very different to you, right? And I think that's the part, depending on whether you like storytelling in a sense where it's got to match a timeline and it's got to be progressive, or if you like storytelling to be chaotic, or if I just think there's a lot that goes into it. And so I do feel like it's a little more of an elusive term.
Yes. No, absolutely. And that I want to acknowledge that. We talk about storytelling all the time. You need to be doing it. But we get it. It's hard. It's difficult. And it's hard to find your voice specifically as a brand and in terms of how you want to go about telling your story.
Yeah, I will agree with that hot take. I definitely feel you are correct in your analysis of that. You guys tell us if you have found storytelling to be effective in the way that you grow your business or your brand. Let us know in the comments. I mean, maybe you're thinking, no, it's the easiest thing in the world to do. And then maybe we want to interview you for our podcast, okay?
Yeah. So we want to know your secret.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and define what lore marketing is.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So we talked about lore, it's the shared stories, accumulated knowledge, inside references. The focus is that it builds meaning over time and becomes relevant to your story. So in this case, to your brand. Lore marketing is building a strong enough story that can shoot off roots. Does that make sense?
If you guys aren't seeing this visually.
It's building a strong enough story that then your consumers can build their own meanings, build their own accumulated knowledge.
Yeah. I love this. Can I just point out though that in there you mentioned the length of time. This isn't similar to maybe storytelling. Lore marketing is not something that you can wake up and do overnight, right? Because I guess so take this podcast, for example. Chelsea and I had this conversation last week. We're like, lore marketing, love, love, love. How can we utilize it to grow the podcast? Okay, what would it look like through that avenue? What it would look like is we now have over 150 episodes of this podcast that we could tap into, and building a foundation around building lore around the podcast would mean that you and I go back and reference the one thing you're so deathly afraid of, right? Because now you've referenced it I don't know how many times in a podcast, or the fact that I love and in some past life have been an insurance agent because I bring that up as my example every single time,
All
right?
the time.
All the time. That's part of my lore, apparently, okay? My affinity towards insurance agents.
Yeah. The thing with lore marketing, and I'm going to bring this up again, but I want to say it right now. Lore marketing, you are not in complete control.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When it comes to lore marketing, and the difference between lore and storytelling is your lore is also going to be dictated by your brand evangelists. It's going to be dictated by your consumers. It's what they end up focusing on.
So I wonder if maybe not using the word dictated though, because I think what it is what you're saying is there's an important element of lore marketing is your audience.
Yes.
They're an active participant in it, right? So maybe like you're saying, we can set up the stage. We can put the information out there to get this type of engagement going, but we don't have control over the audience, and therefore there's this little bit of unknown with how they're going to receive it and where they're going to take it.
Absolutely. I have an example, Vivian, so we can understand this a little better, because again, lore is built by the community. It's the collective that locks in onto something and honestly comes up with the lore, they decide what's relevant and true.
Sure.
Sleep Token.
This is a band, if you do not know. It's a heavy metal band.
I have a tattoo, a Sleep Token tattoo. So Sleep Token, this past year, released a new album, even in Arcadia. When they were promoting this album before it came out, they were showing a lot of promotional stuff with a flamingo on it. the sleep token community has decided that the flamingo's name is Jerry. No one knows who decided this name. Sleep Token has never come out and said that the flamingo's name is Jerry. There's no, it just happened. It just evolved to eventually everyone in the Sleep Token community had decided, yeah, that's Jerry, the flamingo.
First of all, I'm a little offended that you as a leader did not throw Vivian in there as the flamingo name. Like the power you have, you could have.
They had already decided on Jerry. They'd already decided on Jerry.
Okay, so now the band, when they are going and promoting this latest album, they now have something they could tap into, which is if they wanted to release merch with Jerry.
They have a lot of merch. Now, they're not admitting that that's his name, but there is a lot more merch with the flamingo, and I'm not certain that was planned.
Right.
It might be that we latched on to the flamingo. I know in one concert, I don't know which one, and it might have been a couple of them, they brought out like flamingos. Not live flamingos. Like flamingo, I want to say it was an inflatable flamingo.
All I can imagine is a flamingo with the metal collar, like those like punk rock collars and like spiked hair, just marching out one by one.
No, it was not that. It wasn't a real flamingo. I want to say it was either plastic or like inflatable. I don't remember. I wasn't at that concert. But that's what I mean, okay? So they promoted the flamingo, but it took a whole other life of its own.
And so now you're saying that moving forward, the fan base of Sleep Token, pretty much this is, even when they release a new album and it's got no flamingo in sight, this is now going to be a part of their lore.
Yes, this is something that we will always reference Jerry.
So and like 40 years from now, when you're 60 something and you're talking about Sleep Token, right? You're going to their next concert at 60 something. You're going to say
there's going to be people there with a flamingo tattoo, and I'm be like, hey, it's Jerry, and they're going to be like, yeah, I got a Jerry tattoo. You got a album cover tattoo. Look at us.
I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, but I'm glad you brought this up because. What we're not telling you, like she had used the word dictate, and I do think that's a little strong, but there is, for that reason, because I don't want people to shy away from saying, oh, I don't want to do something where I'm going to have no control over it. You guys, if you're posting on social media, you don't have complete control over anything, okay? Any type of strategy you're using, there's always that element of engagement from other people, right? And how they take it and all that. So this is just another mechanism that you can use to say like, hey, if I was a business and I saw that my target audience, my customers were doing something like this where it had kind of caught on, then you could lean into that and then you could start making it a part of your lore and what do you call it? Just talking about it or posting about it. And then essentially you'd over time be using lore marketing to gain awareness for your business.
Exactly. So I want to talk about the difference between storytelling and lore, because storytelling is going to be pretty one-layered.
Okay.
Right? It's you telling the story.
So it's one direction.
It's one direction. Yeah. When it becomes lore is when it builds and kind of creates this own kind of universe. It's when your brand evangelists take the story that you've been giving and they go deeper. Right?
I wonder if, I know this is a little, maybe it's not off topic. I think maybe it's on topic. What about Chuck Norris?
Who?
What?
Chuck Norris. That sounds vaguely familiar. Oh, no.
Oh,
wait.
my gosh.
That sounds
Texas
like
Ranger.
I don't know what that is.
You guys, please excuse my sister. I'm apologizing for her.
What
please
did I do?
Send her hate mail over this, okay? She should know. I don't care what age you are. You should know who Chuck Norris is.
Okay. Well, now this is part of my lore, too. Thanks a lot, Vivian.
Man. Okay. Chuck Norris
Okay.
He did karate and stuff.
Okay.
When we were younger, he was in a lot of
Sure.
movies and stuff, but he had a very popular television show called Texas Ranger where he basically kicked everybody's butt using karate, okay? But his lore basically got to the point where like Chuck Norris was the man that could beat anything, anybody. Like they made several memes out of him now, okay? So
I have my own version of this example. Okay. John Cena.
oh, but
You
he's
can't
not
see
even
me?
comparable.
But what I'm saying is that's lore marketing because now
This should be the marketing hot take. Tell us down in the comments who's better, John Cena or Chuck Norris.
I'm just
and if
saying
any of you
I know
say John Cena,
I know who John Cena is. I
I'm
don't
about
know
to walk out of this podcast. I can't even.
I'm sorry.
I can't with you.
I'm sorry.
You 20-something-year-olds are killing me. John Cena.
Well, I was taking your example and I was applying an example that I thought that made sense.
Okay, just to read you one meme
Okay.
that they like, there are a gajillion of them that are very good. This one says, the flu has to get a Chuck Norris shot once a year.
Okay, that sounds vaguely familiar. Okay.
Okay, anyways.
Sure. I still...
All right, lore marketing. Let's get this back on track.
Okay, so what I was saying is your brand is telling a story. Then your brand evangelists, your really engaged consumers are going to go deeper and they're going to start analyzing everything, right? Which is what you want. You want them to create buzz. You want them to create speculation and conflict. Conflict does not mean negative, okay? It doesn't have to. It does not have to be negative. Conflict can be just finding any little way to get that spark going, okay?
Okay.
You don't have to be negative about it.
So conflict in what terms, though?
Conflict in your story.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what's a good example? Okay, I'm going to give you guys another band example because this is what pops to my head first. Noah Sebastian, the lead singer of Bad Omens. When he's singing, when he's performing, he sometimes likes to do the duck face, right?
Okay.
Fans have decided that he looks like a rubber duck when he does that. It's created memes. There's a very specific meme of a duck with the lips and his hair. It's gone to the point where people will hold up signs of it at concerts. He very famously does not like it. That's conflict.
Okay, gotcha.
That's conflict. He's like, y'all, come on. And we're not going to come on. We're going to continue to say that he's a duck.
He looks like a duck.
Yeah, it's taken on this life that, for one, it's the more engaged fans that know about it. So
Sure.
I love Bad Omens. They're one of my favorite bands, so I know about it. When I went to see Bad Omens recently with Maya, there was a guy dressed as a duck crowd surfing, and she's like, "Why is that guy a duck?" I got to explain to her all of the lore and
Gotcha.
the reason why he was dressed like a duck.
So interestingly enough, too, I think that's the other thing that lore marketing does is it kind of elevates or it gives, it starts to create sub-segments of your own
Yes.
customer base or your audience. And so it's almost like if somebody is interacting with your business for the first time, obviously they convert to a customer, you have now that like established relationship. But when you're utilizing lore marketing, just like you do with any other marketing, we tell you, you know, sending out emails, doing all this stuff. What you're doing over time is kind of creating more of that deeper connection to the point where over the years or over their experiences, they can start to become these like mega fans.
Yes.
Right? Where they know more
It's kind
about,
of, it's one of those IYKYK moments, you know?
if you know, you know. I'm sorry,
See,
you
she
guys.
knew it.
I'm
She
sorry.
knew it. I didn't think you would know what that stands for.
IYKYK.
But yeah, if you know, you know. And so the people who do know feel way more invested. I can give you a small business example. Frey Pearls She's a local Charleston-based jewelry company. She focuses on pearls. Can you believe it? And I recently joined her newsletter, and she calls everyone her pearlies.
Yes.
That's
lore.
That's lore. That's lore, and that's lore marketing, because I did not know about that as a casual fan. Now that I've invested myself more into her brand, I'm like, oh, okay, we're pearlies. Like,
yeah, just like we call you guys SOBs.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys, that's part of our lore. You guys are SOBs. But I love this because it's small little things that you can do over time. And like Chelsea's example just now, that was something very simple. She has given her customers, her audience, a name, right? It's an endearment, a term of endearment to them. And now, though, whenever she's addressing them, they all know exactly what that means. The other part of it, too, with lore marketing that I have read, which I think really helps, is taking it one step further. Not only could she say pearlies, but then over time, as she starts to connect with them in kind of pointing out what particular, what do I want to say? Not elements, what it means to be a pearly. Do you know what I mean? Like characteristics of a pearly, right? And so then what she starts to do is she starts to separate out talking to a very specific group of people, right? And it's kind of like we talk about sometimes having that like flag when you're waving your little freak flag.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if this is you, for us on the SOB Marketing Podcast, we call you guys SOBs. Not only do we mean small-owned businesses, but we are also talking about an approach, okay? You don't have huge budgets. We're not the marketing people that you take advice from if you have a $1 million budget.
Yeah.
That's not an SOB. The SOB we're talking about is they're going to be in their marketing on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. They're proactive. They're maybe a little scrappy. They want to stay in the know, right?
Yeah.
They're not checked out. They're not letting other people do stuff. Like, it's very hands-on. And so I think once you start to like address some of these characteristics, you start to kind of give your audience a moment to feel seen.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's a good way to connect with them.
No, yeah, and that's a great example of using lore marketing.
This episode of the S.O.B. Marketing Podcast is brought to you by the S.O.B. community. If you're a small business owner that is neglecting your marketing and you feel like you've wasted money and time on marketing help that didn't deliver, or if you're just craving support from people who actually get what it's like to run and promote a small business, then our membership community is for you. Visit school.com/SOB to sign up today to get instant access and weekly support. That's SKOOL.com/SOB.
So let's talk about, Vivian, how it works for a small business. Because like we've mentioned, the hardest part of lore marketing is that, you're not fully in control.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you can't steer the conversation. You can absolutely guide it. You can't necessarily force it. So going back to Sleep Token with Jerry, did they think the flamingo would become so important? I'm not sure. But I really think no. I really think the flamingo was kind of just helping build the aesthetic of the imagery. But now the flamingo is in their shirts. It's built its importance.
Sure.
We've built the importance. The audience has. So they set it up, but they set it up not necessarily for the flamingo.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Right.
There were a lot of opportunities. There was a lot of, and Sleep Token does a great job of creating their own lore as well. They're very good storytellers. There were a lot of different elements that we could have focused on.
Sure.
So they were giving us lots of elements. We just picked Jerry.
Right. Well, and also the other thing that kind of stands out to me is what is the one thing that this is all kind of predicated on with lure marketing? It's like looking at the comments, looking at what your audience is saying.
The focus is your audience. What are they invested in? And for one, that should be something you're doing. Period, point blank. Even if you're not trying to do lure marketing, you should know what your target audience is saying when it comes to you. But the great thing about lure marketing is putting the control in the hands of your audience and taking their opinions and what matters to them seriously.
Yeah, it's we always talk about feedback. And so I think it's just a great measure of like, we talk about how important it is to know your target audience and your customers. This is like the pinnacle of that. Another example that I kind of want to bring up, Chelsea, that maybe is a little more, it's easier for people to relate to because it's been long-standing. Red Bull.
Sure.
Okay. And Chelsea says sure because
I can't have caffeine, so I don't drink Red Bull. That would probably kill me.
But you've seen their commercials?
Yeah, I've seen their commercials. Okay. Red Bull gives you wings.
Yes. Okay. So what's interesting about that whole thing though is that Red Bull kind of took on their own lure marketing. What they did with that is basically they ingrained themselves into environments where people were doing like outrageous stunts. They were even, I think they sponsored the X Games. I don't know how many times. Maybe they still do. I think they even have their own version of that, the Red Bull Games or something.
And I've never heard of that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, but they've taken on this whole like identity where they are the risk takers. Yeah. Okay, they sponsor athletes who are putting themselves in situations where they're jumping out of planes and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's part of their lure now. Like anytime you think about Red Bull, you think of a progressive, risk-taking brand because that's what they've aligned themselves with. And so there are so many different ways that you can do this, whether it's through maybe the events that you're supporting, right? Or the sponsorships that you're doing. I just think there are so many different avenues where you can show up and kind of utilize this lure marketing.
I think the really important thing when it comes to building lure, and it's going to be the hardest thing for all of us, is being consistent. You need to have consistent messaging and a consistent story, or at least try storytelling for this to end up having its own legs.
Yeah. And well, good point. Also, this means you can't really be wishy-washy about like changing stuff up all the time, right? And I say this as someone who has the, I think the, sometimes the need to do that, right? But to your point, because it requires a long-term investment and consistency in your storytelling, your story, your brand, all of that. It does mean that it's something you have to keep up with a little more.
Yeah, you want to be consistent. You want to be honest and real. I know we talk about that a lot as small business owners because it's good to create that personalization. I bring this up in the terms of lure marketing because it's going to be easier for you to build a story if it's honest.
Yeah.
Because if it's authentic. Because if you're trying to display something that's not real, it's going to be hard for you to stick with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Absolutely. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Can we also talk about application? I think that's the other part. Similar to like storytelling, I don't want it to be too vague. What is, if we used, using this podcast as an example, okay? Because it's an arm of like, it's a marketing initiative, right? How could we, through lure marketing, actually do...
Yeah. So... I'm sure you guys know, we've already talked about it. I don't trust horses, birds, or children. What we could do is on social media, because we have a S.O.B marketing podcast profile, we could share a video of all the times that I've said that.
Right. Like throughout all the episodes.
Yeah, throughout all the episodes. And be like, Chelsea does not like kids. She doesn't like horses. You know, reminding people of that one thing so that, you know, maybe that'll catch on. So when people think of me, or if they see me in the wild for some reason, they'll be like, she doesn't like kids.
Right.
Or she doesn't trust birds, you know?
Well, and also leaving little Easter eggs around, right? So whether it's through utilizing stories, one of the things that I've seen work really well for a different podcast with doing this, and now I look back and I'm like, oh, I see what they're trying to do here. They actually would post these stories where it would ask like a question and it would reference a podcast episode, but it was one of their early podcast episodes. And so the people that have been listening since the beginning of the podcast, only they would understand and be able to answer it. And so I think they would give like a merch away if you answered it correctly. Yeah. But then the next story would be the actual, or maybe a couple stories down would be the actual answer to it. And so it's a nice way to utilize not a Q&A, but like kind of like a little game. Like on what episode did we talk about X, Y, and Z? And how is this guest related to this guest? And, you know, and so it's forcing you to make these connections, to connect the dots.
Well, and that's a great example because then the people who haven't been listening, they don't know the answers. They're now invested in, one, knowing what the answer is, and two, maybe they're going to go back and listen to that episode.
Absolutely. So I think making it, I love this idea of lore marketing because it seems like something fun. I don't know. I just feel like it's a great way to for one, solidify a relationship with someone. What better way to actually get your audience involved? We talk so much about engagement on social media, but you guys, this is what real life engagement looks like. Building a community of people. And that's the other part is we've talked about how in 2026, community is such a big thing, especially for businesses. Like, hey, whether it's like your exclusive insiders or whatever it is, try to build a community somehow that, for one, they can go out and basically help you with marketing, promoting your own business, right? Because they love it so much. They're brand evangelist, as we all know, Chelsea loves that term.
Which, lore marketing, we talk about all the time. In one of our very first episodes, Vivian had to explain to me what an evangelist was.
That's right. There you go.
So you longtime listeners know that, but you newer listeners don't know that.
That's right. So one day we could post on our story in what episode did Chelsea... Yeah.
Or we can clip all... this is a great idea. I might do this, guys. I'm going to clip all the times that I've said brand evangelist in all of our podcasts. And then at the very end, it's going to be the episode where Vivian's teaching me what a brand evangelist is.
Where she's like, what is that?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing is, it seems like such a great way to actually make a connection. We talk about that's the core of marketing. You want people to feel a certain way towards your business. You want them to have loyalty. Yeah. This builds or has the potential to build loyalty.
And I love this because we had a previous conversation about perfectionism. This is kind of, I don't want to say the opposite of that, but lore marketing is a lot more natural, right? And so it's kind of is the opposite of perfectionism. It's people wanting to connect with authenticity.
Yes. All right. So if anything, we hope that at least now you guys know, if you've never heard of lore marketing, we hope we've given you an idea of what it is, how you can use it in your business to promote your product and service, and also how you can build an entire community from it and have fun doing it. All right. So we hope that this episode was super informational, but Chelsea, why don't you give us the TLDL?
Absolutely. Okay. This is the TLDL section. Too long, didn't listen. If you skipped ahead, I'm going to give you a brief summary of what we talked about today. However, you need to go back and listen to this entire conversation. It's my birthday wish. Would you would you mess up my birthday? That's so rude. Okay, so today we talked about lore marketing, what it is, why it's different from storytelling. You know, storytelling is kind of more singular, whereas lore marketing involves your audience. We gave some great examples. If that sound really vague to you, we talked about, bands, of course, because I want to talk about bands, but we also gave you some small businesses and some bigger business examples. And we also talked about how to go about it a little bit for your small business, because lore marketing definitely sounds more vague when we're talking about it, but there are some things that you can do to push the envelope and try to get lore marketing legs. If that makes sense. Okay, Vivian, if you guys are not following, make sure that you do that.
Yeah, actually, Chelsea just blew out her candles and she told me that she made a wish, and the wish was that if you were listening on Apple Podcasts, that you would go ahead and leave us a review.
Yes, I did wish that, because we're a little low on those. So I would appreciate that. It's also my birthday wish. Can everything be my birthday wish?
I mean, pretty much.
Okay, good. Also, buy us a coffee. Obviously, we're not going to caffeinate me. It's a metaphor. But if you want to support this podcast, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/SOB marketing. And Vivian, I want all of our followers to go be the best SOB they can be.